Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Practical Shaman podcast. Make sure that you hit subscribe, that you hit like, and all of that, because what I'm going to be bringing to you over the course of the next few years is compelling conversations with people who are also in the shamanic circle, which to me is a very big, broad circle. And today is no exception. I have Isa Gucciardi, who I've been really looking forward to meeting for many years. She's a Ph.D. and the founding director of the Foundation of the Sacred Stream, a school for consciousness studies in Berkeley, California. She's very smart. She has degrees in transpersonal psychology, cultural anthropology, and comparative religion. And she's a dedicated Buddhist practitioner for 40 years. And also, she has studied with many shamanic practitioners and teaches applied shamanic practices. I can go on, but let's get into the conversation. But I would like to say that she is the author of the book, Coming to Peace and the New Return to the Great Mother. And I'd like to talk to you about the return to the Great Mother. What does that mean for you?
Well, it's a way of bringing people back into in a very visceral and practical way, into a new relationship with the Great Mother, with the sacred feminine. And it's a book that's written for, particularly for women who are giving birth and giving them some options on understanding where the birthing process is and in the whole process of initiation that a woman's body puts her through, beginning with her own birth, going through puberty, going through her monthly cycle, going into her first encounter sexually, going into giving birth, going into menopause, and going into death. And so the book is, originally it's the new return to the Great Mother, because the first book I wrote was primarily for birthing women. And then I realized, the birth is just one moment in these initiatory moments that every woman's body brings her through and shows her what her spiritual path is as her body changes. And so I wanted to do some more writing about the nature of initiation and the way in which our biology is actually our spiritual teacher, and help women and men and everyone who identifies with any kind of sexuality to reconnect with the power of the sacred feminine and to bring that back into the world, back into the relationship that we have with ourselves, with our bodies, with the earth, and to help us heal the places within us that have become separated from the values of the sacred feminine, that have become separated from the power of the earth. And so this book, it's a easy book to read. My idea for it was that it would be something that someone could pick up and read in a short amount of time and really get a different view. And there is a meditation in the book, and it's also on our website, sacredstream.org, that is designed to help people reconnect with the power of the great feminine on their own terms. It may be the experience of a bear, it may be experience of the moon, it may be a feeling, a deep-seated feeling of peace, it may be a light. And in the book, I talk about the different ways in which other women have, and men and people beyond sexual identity, dual identity, have connected with the power of the great feminine. And so you get an idea of how the process works.
I think we forgot to say hello. So I jumped right on in when I got down there, and they're like, hello, it's really nice to have you here. And I guess we did the little snippet beforehand. What many listeners might not know is, because I'm the practical shaman and, I'm pretty much down to earth, but I do a lot of reading in religion and a lot of reading in anthropology, and I run a marketing department for a behavioral health care organization. So when I saw your background, I thought, like, wow, we have a very similar background, and not so much Buddhist. I do more, Vedic processes, and only as a supplement to my shamanic work, not as my primary avenue of processing, I guess would be the word. But when you were talking about, and I didn't know, I should have read your book because I haven't, and I apologize. but I'm writing a new book called The Practical Shaman, and there's a chapter about going in, and I talk about the involution process as a process of initiation. And are you a mother?
Yes. Yes, I have 2 children. Yes.
Because I got there in some other way because I'm like, I'm so tired of the butterfly that transforms. There's got to be another, there must be another metaphor here. And I landed on the involution process because, the whole book is about, changing your inner experience. And I know that that's what you're about as well. How did you get to these combinations of all of this education, and how did that lead you to Buddhism, and how did it lead you to shamanism?
Well, I grew up all around the world, actually. I spent the first part of my childhood in Hawaii, and I was put in a hula school at age 3. So, and at the time in Hawaii, there was all this, everyone was discovering Hawaii. It was, it had become a state, and there was all this lovely hula hands kind of hula, which, I wasn't too crazy about, but I was really crazy about the ancient hulas, which were not at all popular then, that have now had a resurgence, thank goodness. And I wanted to dance the ancient hulas. So this older woman kind of took me under her arm or her wing, and we danced to the sea, we danced to the wind, we danced to the fish. And I was inculcated, I was dancing for many years, with the spirits of nature. And I spent a lot of time alone in nature as a child. I couldn't get me off of the beach. My best friends were the crabs, so I had this deep immersive experience of nature and shamanic practices early on. And then we moved to Mexico, where for part of the year I was left in the care of the Huichol ranch hands that ran the ranch where my family, would live part of the year. And so I had, they taught me how to track rabbits. They taught me about the different plants that, you could, use if you got stung by a bee, to find the plant that was going, you chew it up and put it on the bee sting, they really were kind to me. They taught me how to ride horses, and I was exposed to their culture, as they were taking care of me. And then I moved to Saudi Arabia, and every place I went, I wound up with the people of the place. In Saudi Arabia, there was a big expat community that would all go hang out at the Aramco compound. And I was like, the goats are over there, and, it was really kind of surreal. It was in the 60s, and it was very surreal. And in the desert, you would have these compounds that had, there was very little in the desert. There was Riyadh. Now, when I look at Riyadh, I can't believe this is Riyadh, because there was one paved road between the airport and downtown. When downtown was the souks, it was the bazaars. There was nothing there. And so we were on that road, and goodness knows whose idea it was to grow grass in the middle of the desert. But we were growing grass in the garden, and they would come and cut it, and they would dump the grass over the side of the wall. And the Bedouins, who were, had lived there forever, would come and bring their goats and give them the grass. And so I'm like, hi, I like your goats, and they were kids my age, they were young boys and girls. And so I got to know them, and I was intrigued with their way of life, and they had all these amazing incense that they would burn, and they would take me to their tents. And, so I had this whole inculcation of, other experience. And, I think within that, there was the experience of other ways of knowing and other ways of being. And And so I started studying cultural anthropology, trying to find a culture that reflected the power of nature that I had found so much solace in, and that I had a big question that I write about in my book, Coming to Peace. How do we bring the peace of nature, the quietude of nature, the harmony of nature into human experience? And so I was trying to find, has there a culture that has done that? And I came up with a few, but I wasn't quite satisfied. So I thought maybe it's a religion. So I started studying religion. And the two traditions that I felt came closest to really offering a pathway to harmony were, of course, shamanic practice, which I'd already been exposed to without having a name for it, and Buddhism. And so, and I started practicing Buddhism at a very young age, and I had actually started in Hawaii because one of my good friends was a Japanese Hawaiian girl who would her family would take me to the dojo on the weekend, and I was like, those gongs, I have to follow those gongs. Where are they taking us? Who are these golden statues? Who are these Buddhas? And so when I returned to Buddhism, it was a very powerful return in my late teens, and so and so it was just from the very beginning that all of this evolved. And as I did different things in my life. I worked as an interpreter of languages, and I hadn't really realized I was being trained to learn how to translate from the unseen into the seen. I was translating from one verbal reality to another verbal reality. But as I went back to school and got my Ph.D. in transpersonal psychology, and as I became certified as a hypnotherapist, and as I started working in the clinical setting, I really started seeing, first of all, the limitations of traditional psychological approaches, and the limitations even of traditional hypnotherapeutic approaches. And I really found, here's a process that we can adapt into this modern context, this process of power retrieval, and help people become more empowered. And here's this process of soul retrieval and we can adapt this hypnotherapeutic process to help the person become their own shamanic practitioner and do their own soul retrievals. And it just really emerged depth hypnosis, which is a combination of shamanism and Buddhism and energy medicine and hypnotherapy and transpersonal psychology. But the two big engines are shamanism
And hula.
and Buddhism.
Don't forget the hula that you started at
Yeah,
30.
right. Well, hula is part of the shamanism, right?
I one time I stayed at I was on the Big Island, and they were, I stayed with this woman had an Airbnb, and she was a hula dancer. And so she did a private hula dance for my friend and I, and so I got to experience that part. But you just made me laugh when you said, "Oh, when I got back seriously into Buddha when I was a teen." So like you clearly are a seeker here,
Yeah.
and translating. My quest has always been how how do we get people to know themselves as nature instead of how that, because I'm sure you don't mean it as a separate experience of, the quiet of nature, because we are that nature. So how do I become to experience myself as nature is my current question. And like, how do I get other people to do that? And so I think that, like, people like you and myself, we've been doing this for a long, long time. And so tell me, you're creating, I happen to see in an email thread that you're creating a new course coming up, or you're teaching more coming up.
Yeah, I've got, there's a lot happening. Actually, one of the courses that's coming up is not totally new, but it's an important class that might be of interest to your audience. It's a class on coming to peace, which is a process of conflict resolution that draws from both Buddhist and shamanic traditions in terms of helping people create a container to be able to approach conflict and resolve conflict in a very straightforward way. And that class is coming up in May. And I do think that would be something that would be of interest to both shamanic practitioners and Vedic practitioners. The Vedic processes are, I think Buddhism and Vedic processes have very similar roots, so so we have that class coming up, and we also have our whole applied shamanic program, which is actually just we're in the process of right now, where we have the power retrieval. Well, first of all, of course, we have the shamanic journey class, and then the power retrieval and the middle world class, and then the soul retrieval and the guiding of souls class, and then the advanced retreat. And this is a program that is always cycling through all of the programs at the Sacred Stream, so you can enter into that training and within a year have a very strong basis of understanding of shamanic practice, and then you can go into the plant medicine insight integration program, which is the applied shaman, an extension of the applied shamanism process. So there's a lot going on for people.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I had told Isa that I had a friend who had gone through her program and really liked it many years ago. You've mentioned plant medicine a couple times, and I think that would be like a really good place to kind of coalesce our discussion. I work at a behavioral healthcare company, and they're creating this new brand called Conscious Health and Wellness, and I've been a little struggling with it because everyone thinks that it's new and innovative. And I'm like, no, I did plant medicine, 20 years ago when AA didn't work for me and therapy stopped it just didn't get to the root of the problem. And so here we are now, and we've got this new medicine like that. It's the new wonder of the world. And I don't want to poo-poo it at all, because it helped really clear out those kernels that were stuck. One time I envisioned like a salt lick being removed from the core of me. And so, but I'm a little concerned, and I want to ask your opinion about this, that we can't take this out of the settings, that set in settings, I guess is the psychological word, or something about that. And I want to make sure that, and maybe this is foolish, maybe we opened up the cave for this 25 years ago for other people, but how can we be helpful as wisdom keepers to help as this becomes mainstream Budweiser?
Well, I think that most important thing is, I think you're right in terms of context. I mean, I don't think you have to do plant medicines in the jungle. I mean, it doesn't have to be that kind of context, but you do have to understand the context out of which plant medicine has arisen. And that is the natural world. And it is the purview of shamanic practitioners who have been trying to understand the power and wisdom of the earth for millennia. And so we need to, so my program teaching the certificate, you have to do all of the shamanic work before you get to the plant medicine insight integration, so that you understand as a modern person the importance of respecting the earth and approaching and understanding the plants as wisdom keepers far beyond just the psychotropic plants. I mean, the whole herbal tradition and the whole work with plants that shamans have always done is the larger context out of which the psychotropic plant use comes. And we really, I think by educating people and people who are running circles and people who are imbibing and who are preparing to imbibe and trying to process what they've imbibed. I think if we give them this larger context and help them understand the intelligence that is part of, or is basically running the show, actually, And if we help them understand how important it is to approach that intelligence with humility and with respect. And I think we can bring it into the modern context in that way without being a culture vulture, without going into that consumer, like consumption, weekend warrior, let's do it, dude, kind of thing. It's, like, I think we can create an alternative way of being with the plants and understanding the larger context, respecting the larger context out of which it comes, and then really seeking guidance from the plants, trying to understand ourselves. You said you had that experience of having those places that were stuck, that after all the work that you have done, that you still needed help, and the plants are really good for working at that deep level. And I really think the more people that learn to work at that deeper level, and the more that people can, as you say, go inward and learn more about their inner world and the way in which they are creating the world around them from the experience of their inner world, I think that the more we're going to get a change on the planet, which is what we desperately need.
I love that approach. In fact, I may have you come over and maybe we'll do a talk for the behavioral health community through my work, because my boss gets it at a certain level, and I just would like to, I'd like to train, the people in the clinic to understand that you can't take the medicine away from the plants. And I don't know that it's the best work for people at a certain level. And I don't come with judgment. I come with experience. And so I definitely would like to further this conversation with you.
Love to continue it with you.
And we can do it again. I think we have so much more to talk about. So I'm totally, I want to say that if people are looking for more of Isa's work, go over to, I think it's thesacredstream.org.
Right.
And check out her classes, because I can tell from the richness of your share that your programs are probably embodied and rich. And I know from some people that I know who have been there, full of heart and soul. And to me, that's what people need right now at this time in history.
Yes.
We don't need more information. We need heart and soul, and we need to be able to integrate that. And somebody who thinks that she jumped back into Buddhism at 17 and clearly is put a few times around the sun, has that kind of depth and wisdom to share. So thank you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. And thank you for your work in the world. It's such a pleasure to get the opportunity to speak with you. I so appreciate your work and all that you do. So thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, you're very welcome. And for those of you who are going to be listening because of Isa, you can go over to my website, thepracticalshaman.com. And right now, I just released Winds of Spirit on audio. And, there hasn't been enough men in the movement in a while. And the Winds wanted a man to read it. So this beautiful soul has read the book, and he took hours upon hours to learn all the different cultures and the pronunciations, and did a masterful job. In fact, I interviewed him on the Practical Shaman podcast. So check that out as well. Hit subscribe, go over and check out Isa's website, and have a blessed day.